A bank sold a little boy a worthless strip of dirt for $47, laughed while he signed the paper, and spent the next 36 years wishing they had never let him leave that auction. What Calvin Pruitt did with that laughter is something nobody saw coming. Whitfield had been a lawyer for 14 years. He did not scare easily. He was scared now. His phone was pressed to his ear in the parking lot of a half-finished building on the east side of Dillon County. And the man on the other end of the line was asking him to explain how a $31 million development had been frozen. Not by weather, not by permits, not by a city council, but by a 12-foot strip of land that his own title company had certified as non-issue 18 months ago. Whitfield looked at the county printout in his hand. Parcel 44B. An owner of record, Calvin Pruitt. He sat down on the hood of his truck and did not say anything for a long time. But to find Calvin Pruitt, you have to go back 36 years. October 1988, Dillon County Courthouse. They held the tax delinquent land auction on the east lawn. Somebody had set up 3 folding tables pushed end to end. There was a coffee pot on the far left that nobody had refilled since 9 in the morning. 4 locals stood near the back, arms crossed, watching the auctioneer work through parcels nobody wanted. Calvin was 11 years old. He had ridden his bicycle 4 miles. He was wearing a coat 2 sizes too big because his mother bought things he could grow into. He had $47 and a coffee can in his backpack. Birthday money, 3 months of lawn mowing, in 1 crumpled 5 his grandmother had tucked into his coat pocket before he left. She didn't explain why. Calvin didn't ask. The auctioneer read out parcel 44B near the end of the list. 12 feet wide, half a mile long, no utilities, no road access. The eastern boundary line of old alderman farmland, brush and dirt and nothing else. The county assessor had valued it at $60 in 1981 and had not updated that number since. Dale Stokes was standing near the back. Stokes ran First Meridian Savings Bank. Gold watch, press jacket on a Tuesday. The kind of man who stood at the back of rooms because he assumed the rooms belonged to him. When the auctioneer read the parcel, Stokes laughed, not under his breath. Out loud, fully, turning to the man beside him and saying something that made that man laugh too. He pointed his chin toward Calvin without looking away from his conversation. Nobody bid. Calvin raised his hand. $47, he said. The auctioneer's gavel came down. Stokes was still smiling when he walked to his car. He did not look back. Calvin stepped to the table. He signed where the auctioneer pointed. He took the receipt. He folded it once, then again, and put it in the coat pocket where his grandmother's $5 had been. He walked to his bicycle. He did not look at Stokes. He did not look at the men who had laughed. He unclipped the kickstand and rode back the way he came. His mother was washing dishes when he got home. He set the coffee can on the counter. Empty now. She said, "Did you get it?" He said, "Yes, ma'am." She nodded and went back to the dishes. She did not ask what it was for. She had been watching Calvin study that county tax map for 3 weeks, checking it out from the library, spreading it across the kitchen table, tracing lines with his finger the way other kids traced maps in video games. She was not a worried woman. She was a watchful one. Calvin went to his room, opened the top drawer of his desk, and pulled out a composition notebook his mother had given him for school 2 months earlier. He had not used it for school. He opened it to the first page. He wrote the date. He wrote the parcel number. He wrote $47 and the word paid. Then he opened the county tax map he had checked out from the library for the 4th time in 6 weeks, and he laid it flat on his desk under the lamp. He traced the eastern boundary of the old alderman parcels with his finger. All of them. 400 acres total, spread across 3 separate owners, all of them running east toward Route 9. His finger stopped at the 12-foot strip, his strip. He looked at where Route 9 bent. He looked at where it would have to go if it ever needed to widen or reroute or open a secondary approach to the east side of the county. He looked at the 12-foot strip again. Calvin did not smile. He did not say anything out loud. He just sat there in the lamplight with the map in front of him, 11 years old, the folded receipt still in his coat pocket. And he knew something that nobody in that courtyard had thought to know. He didn't need to tell anyone yet. He needed to wait. Before this story gets to the part that made a lawyer drop his coffee, make sure you're subscribed. Yeah, because the document Calvin found next is the one nobody was supposed to find. Saturday, June 4th, 1991, Dillon County Public Library, reference section, third shelf from the floor. Calvin was 14. He was sitting on the tile floor with a Bound County Road Commission report across his knees. The cover was brown cardstock. It smelled like a basement. Someone had stamped the date on the spine in red ink, 1956, and that stamp had faded to the color of rust. He had been coming to this shelf on the first Saturday of every month for 2 years. Most people walked past it without slowing down. Calvin had read every volume on it. He turned to page 41. The report was called Dillon County Road Expansion, Route 9 Corridor, Eastern Approach. 12 pages of survey notes, land descriptions, and one table near the back that listed parcels flagged for infrastructure reservation. Calvin read the table slowly. He read it again. Parcel 44, B, 12-foot utility and access corridor. Permanent infrastructure designation, reserved for future county road use, filed and recorded. October 1956. He sat with that for a moment. He turned back 2 pages and found the companion note. The Route 9 expansion had been canceled in 1961 after the county chose a different routing. The whole project had been shelved, but the land reservation had never been canceled with it. Nobody had filed a vacating order. Nobody had gone back and cleared the record. The designation was still alive, still sitting in the county books 35 years later, attached to a 12-foot strip of dirt that Calvin Pruitt had bought for $47. He ordered a photocopy from the reference librarian for 50 cents. She slid it across the counter without looking up. Calvin folded it and put it in the notebook. He walked home. He did not run. That evening, the kettle was on the stove. Denise was at the counter pouring 2 cups. They had been married 8 months. She was 23. She worked at the county school board office and noticed things without always saying them. She set a cup at Calvin's side of the table. She looked at the map spread open in front of him. He had drawn lines on it in pencil. Route 9 going east, the Alderman parcels, the spot where the only flat and viable entry point for a large-scale eastern development would have to cross the 12-foot strip he owned. Denise said, "That's your land there?" Calvin said, "Yes." She said, "And the road?" He said, "Has to go through it." She picked up her cup. She looked at the map one more second. She said, "Then we keep paying taxes." She went back to the counter. That was the whole conversation. That was enough. In the months that followed, Calvin started watching the Alderman parcels the way a person watches weather. He drove past on the first Sunday of every month, not stopping, just looking. September 1992. Survey flags on the far north corner, orange, fresh. February 1993. Tire tracks on the service road, heavy tread, something larger than a pickup. August 1993. A new LLC recorded at the county clerk's office. Dillon East Properties, filed by a law firm out of Knoxville. Calvin wrote the name in his notebook. April 1994. Dillon East Properties purchased 140 acres of the northern Alderman parcel. Calvin found the deed record on a Tuesday. He sat in the clerk's office for 20 minutes with it. Then he found the second LLC, then the third. Different names. Same registered agent address, same law firm. Someone was quietly assembling the Eastern Alderman land piece by piece, moving slowly, staying below the threshold that would draw local attention, buying 1 parcel per year, letting time pass between filings. Calvin tracked each purchase in the notebook. Date, acreage, price, LLC name, total assembled. By October 1997, whoever was behind those LLCs controlled 280 acres of the 400 that made up the Eastern Alderman land. Calvin did one more calculation. He drew a line on the hand-drawn map from the assembled parcels to Route 9. Direct path, flat approach, no obstacles, except one. A 12-foot strip, parcel 44B. Am I running precisely across the only viable road corridor connecting all 280 assembled acres to the county's main artery? Without that 12-foot strip, the entire eastern parcel was landlocked. Not metaphorically, not partially, completely. No ingress, no egress, no development permit would touch it. Calvin set down the pencil. He looked at the map for a long time. Then he closed the notebook and he went to bed. The trap was not set by anything Calvin had done. It had been said in 1956 by a road commission report nobody had read in 35 years. Calvin had just found it. $140,000 was a lot of money to leave on a kitchen table. The man sitting across from Calvin in 2011 was named Horace. He wore a suit that cost more than Calvin's first car and set his leather briefcase on the floor with the kind of care that said he had carried important things in it for a long time. He worked for Crestline Group, the corporation that had spent nearly 2 decades quietly stitching together the Eastern Alderman parcels under a chain of LLCs. He slid a folder across the table. Calvin looked at the number on the top sheet. He did not pick it up. He said, "You want more coffee?" Horace said he was fine. Calvin poured himself a cup. He set the pot back on the counter. He came back to the table and sat down. He said, "No." Horace said, "Mr. Pruitt, this is a significant offer for a 12-foot strip." Calvin said, "I know," Horace said. "Is there a number you'd consider?" Calvin looked at him. He said, "Not today." Horace picked the folder up, but he did not slam it. He did not raise his voice, but his jaw moved in the way that a person's jaw moves when they are used to hearing yes. He left. Denise was in the doorway. She watched the car pull down the road. She said, "Third one?" Calvin said, "Third one?" She went to check on the kettle. But this was not where it started. The first offer had come in 2001. A real estate agent named Tillman knocked on the front door on a warm Friday. He was young and clean-cut and held a clipboard in a way that suggested he thought the clipboard gave him authority. He explained that a development group was looking to consolidate parcels in the Eastern Corridor and would be interested in any adjacent properties. He said the number slowly, $8,000. Calvin thanked him. He said no. Tillman left a card. Calvin wrote the date, the name, and the number in the notebook. He put the card in a kitchen drawer. A phone call. The voice on the line was formal. He identified himself as representing the Dillon County Economic Development Office. He said the county had an interest in facilitating regional growth on the Eastern Corridor. He mentioned $22,500 for the strip to be transferred cleanly with no conditions. Calvin said, "I appreciate the call." He said no. He wrote it down. Then came Horace in 2011, $140,000, leather briefcase, coffee he didn't drink. No. Renata was 12 the year Tillman knocked on the door. She had been sitting at the top of the stairs when it happened. Calvin hadn't known that until later. When she came to the kitchen and asked why the man with the clipboard looked mad when he walked to his car, Calvin said because he expected a different answer. Renata said, "What did he want?" Calvin said, "The strip." She was quiet for a second. She said, "The one we mow?" He said, "That one." She said, "Why?" He said, "Someday you'll see." She went back upstairs. He almost said more. He didn't. In Knoxville, sometime in late 2013, the Crestline Group held a meeting that Calvin would never see but could have predicted. Their Eastern project was stalled. 280 assembled acres, permits in process, financing arranged, and one 12-foot strip on the county's books that their attorneys kept circling back to like a word they couldn't stop reading. Someone in that meeting said the word abandonment. A lawyer paced near the window. Someone else said they'd tried 3 times. The lawyer paced the other direction. They agreed to wait another few years. Let the man age. See if his position softened. It didn't. Calvin mowed the strip twice a year, spring and fall. It took 40 minutes. He paid the annual property tax every April. The bill had started at $9 in 1988. By 2015, it had climbed to $31. He paid it in person at the county clerk's office. He kept every receipt. He kept every receipt going back to the original county records from 1956, 63 consecutive years of documentation showing continuous ownership and active tax compliance. He did not advertise this. He just kept the folder. A certified letter, return receipt. Crestline Group letterhead. No agent this time, no county voice, no Horace. This one was direct. With $310,000 outright purchase, closing within 45 days. Attached was a legal summary that described the strip as a parcel of minimal size and speculative commercial value. Calvin read the word speculative and set the letter on the table. Denise came in from the back room. She saw the letterhead. She had seen enough letterheads to recognize the shape of them now. She said, "How much this time?" He said, "310. She said, "And?" He said, "No." She nodded once. She went back to the back room. She did not ask why. She had not asked why since 1991, when she stood at the kitchen counter and said, "Then, we keep paying taxes." She had not needed to ask since then. 18 months after that letter, a workman's crew broke ground on Phase 1 of Crestline's Eastern development. Their title company had run a certification that cleared the strip as a non-issue. Somebody had missed the 1956 filing. Somebody had missed the infrastructure designation. Somebody had assumed a 12-foot brush strip with no recorded improvements was harmless background noise. They were wrong. By March 2024, excavation had stopped, and on a quiet Thursday morning, Calvin's phone rang. He was at the kitchen table, notebook closed, coffee cup in his right hand. He looked at the number on the screen. Area code he didn't recognize. Law firm prefix. He set the cup down. He picked up the phone. The lawyer's voice came through even before Calvin finished saying hello. He identified himself as Richard Whitfield, senior counsel for Crestline Group. He said he was calling to discuss a resolution. And he said the word resolution the way people say it when they mean surrender but aren't ready to use that word yet. Calvin said, "I'm listening." Whitfield said they were prepared to make a final offer of $400,000, contingent on immediate deed transfer and a waiver of any infrastructure claims tied to the parcel. Calvin let him finish. He said, "I appreciate the call." He said, "I'll have someone get back to you." He hung up before Whitfield could answer. Renata drove down that Saturday. She was 32 now. She had finished her law degree at the University of Tennessee and practiced property and easement law in Nashville. She had not chosen that specialty by accident. Her father had spent her entire childhood talking about a 12-foot strip of dirt the way other fathers talked about the weather. Just a thing that was always present, always true, always worth noticing. She carried a file box from her car to the kitchen table. She spread everything flat. The original deed, the 1956 Road Commission report, photocopied for 50 cents at the Dillon County Public Library in June 1991. 63 consecutive years of property tax receipts, each one paperclipped to the county statement that had generated it. The 3 rejection letters, the Crestline certified offer from 2019, and Calvin's notebook. 36 years of entries, dates and dollar amounts and names and LLC filings written in the same mechanical pencil since the first entry in October 1988. Renata read in silence for 11 minutes. And then she looked up. She said, "They filed an abandonment claim." Calvin said, "I know." She said, "They're arguing non-use, that the strip sat dormant long enough to void your deed." Calvin said, "Check the tax receipts." She looked back down. She pulled one page, then another, then a third. She fanned them out in sequence across the table. She said, 63 years. Calvin said, 63 years. Renata was quiet for a second. She said, "Dad, they taxed you every year. The county itself treated it as an active parcel. You can't legally abandon something the county keeps billing you for." Calvin picked up his coffee cup. He said, "I know." She looked at him for a moment, the way a person looks at someone who has been waiting a very long time to be understood. Then she picked up her phone and called Whitfield. The hearing was held at Dillon County Courthouse on a Thursday morning in April 2024. Room 14, 4 rows of public seating, a clerk at the side desk, a judge named Harmon who had been on the bench in Dillon County for 22 years and was not known for wasting his mornings. Whitfield had filed the abandonment claim 2 weeks earlier. It was a creative argument. Adverse possession on the basis of long-term physical non-use, overlaid with the argument that Crestline's adjacent construction activity constituted effective occupancy of the corridor. It was the kind of argument you file when you have no better options and $31 million frozen in place. Renata set 3 documents on the table. She did not stack them. She laid them flat, side by side, in the order someone would need to read them. The 1956 infrastructure designation. In the 1961 project cancellation, with the attached note confirming that no vacating resolution had ever been filed. And the tax receipt file, banded and tabbed, 1 sheet per year, 63 years running without a single gap. Renata said, abandonment requires intent to relinquish ownership. You cannot relinquish something the county of Dillon was actively taxing every year, and the owner was actively paying. The 1956 designation was never vacated. It remains a live infrastructure record. The adverse possession claim has no legal foundation. She placed one more document on the table, a letter from the Dillon County Planning Commission, dated 3 weeks prior, confirming the 1956 corridor designation still appeared active in county infrastructure records and had never been formally dissolved. Judge Harmon looked at the table. He looked at Whitfield. He said, "Counsel." Whitfield said, "Your Honor, we'd ask for a brief recess." Harmon said, "I'll give you 10 minutes. The recess lasted 23. When they came back, the hearing lasted 4 more. Harmon ruled for the defense, 1 paragraph. 2 minutes. Done. Whitfield did not say anything when the gavel came down. He reached for his phone. The negotiation lasted 2 days. Calvin did not attend either session in person. Renata handled it. She sat across the table from 2 Crestline attorneys in a conference room in Knoxville and went through the terms line by line, the way her father had gone through county records line by line, patient and precise and unwilling to be hurried. Calvin did not want $400,000. He did not want $310,000. He did not want a lump sum at all. What he wanted was a permanent easement payment, monthly, tied to commercial use of the access corridor, indexed to inflation, transferable in full to his heirs upon his death. The number was $4,200 per month. Crestline's attorney said that was unreasonable. Renata said, "Your client has $31 million in development financing frozen because of a 12-foot strip my father bought for $47 in 1988. What would you like to negotiate?" There was a pause. The attorney said they would need to revise the counter. Renata said, "Take your time." They came back at $3,800. Renata said $4,200. They offered a 5-year cap with renegotiation. Why Renata said in perpetuity, or we go back to the county with the 1956 filing and let the Planning Commission decide how to handle an active infrastructure designation on a frozen development site. They accepted every term. Renata called Calvin on a Tuesday evening. He picked up on the second ring. She said, "They sign." He said, "All the terms?" She said, "Every one." He said, "Good." She said, "Dad." He said, "I know." He hung up. Denise was in the kitchen. She had heard the 2-word side of the call. She did not ask what the other side had said. She turned to the stove. She put the kettle on. The signing happened at the Dillon County Clerk's office on a Friday morning. 2 pages, 4 signatures. Calvin signed where the notary pointed. He took his copy. He walked to his truck. He opened the notebook to the last page with writing. Below the entry from 2019, $310,000. No. He wrote the date. Then he wrote, "Terms accepted, $4,200 per month, permanent, transferable." Then he wrote one more line, $47 in, starting May 1st. He closed the notebook. That Sunday, a small item ran in the Dillon County Gazette. 2 paragraphs, easement agreement finalized on Eastern Corridor parcel. Monthly arrangement reached between local landowner and development group. Dale Stokes was in Florida. He did not comment. The 4 men who had stood at the back of that auction in 1988, 2 of them still lived in Dillon County. One of them read the item at his kitchen table. He set the paper down. He did not say anything. Some men buy land. Calvin Pruitt bought a laugh, a 12-foot strip, in 36 years of their underestimation, and turned all 3 into a monthly check that would outlast every one of them. The notebook sits in the same kitchen drawer where Denise first watched him open it. The folded receipt is still inside the front cover. $47. October 1988. Paid. Would you have taken the lump sum or held for the monthly terms like Calvin did? Drop your answer below. And if you've ever trusted a quiet long game over a fast payout, this channel is for you.